In an important ruling today, the Supreme Court rejected a challenge to affirmative action. Now, this comes from the Huffington Post. They said the vote was 4-3, and only 7 justices had participated in the decision. Justice Elena Kagan had recused herself for prior work on the case as a United States Solicitor General, and of course, nobody was there to fill Scalia's seat. Now, the case that really decided the future of affirmative action was the case Fisher versus the University of Texas. Now, this was brought by a woman named Abigail Fisher, who was a white woman who said that the university had discriminated against her based on race. Texas has a program that guarantees admission to top students in every high school in the state. The top 10% of students can automatically get a position in these state schools. Basically, you're guaranteed a position in these schools based on your merit. Now, in his majority opinion, Justice Anthony Kennedy stated that Fisher did not challenge the state's 10% policy. The court ruled that the university system's holistic approach to choosing a student body beyond the top achievers, which considers a number of different factors, including race, can stand. Basically, what happened is that she did not meet the threshold and therefore, didn't qualify for automatic placement. She didn't get 10%. She was not in the 10%, and she ended up having to compete with many other people in order to get into this college. Now, she and other applicants who didn't make that top 10% were evaluated on 2 different scores. One allotted points for grades and test scores. The other, called a Personal Achievement Index, awarded points for 2 required essays, leadership activities, service, and special circumstances. Now, special circumstances includes people with different socioeconomic status, or the student's school, or even coming from a home with a single parent, or one where English wasn't spoken, and of course that also includes race. Those are all part of the special circumstances. Those 2 scores combined determine your admission. Now, among those students that she was competing against, Fisher really didn't stand out all that much. Court records showed that her grade point average was a 3.59, and her SAT scores were 1180 out of 1600. That's not bad. That's actually pretty good. It's better than mine. But apparently, of course, it wasn't enough to make it in that top 10% in this very, very selective university. Now, the school's rejection rate, to show you how much this school discriminates, right? Or how highly selective they are. The school's rejection rate for that year, for the remaining 841 openings, was higher than the turn-down rate for students trying to get into Harvard. Basically, it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to this school. That's amazing. As a result, university officials claim in court filings that even if Fisher received points for her race and every other personal achievement factor, the letter she received in the mail would still have said no. Now, you're probably thinking, Jeff, it's not about that, right? They didn't let her in, but they let in people with lower test scores? And those people with lower test scores, well, obviously, they're black. So obviously, this is racist. This whole thing is racist against Abigail Fisher, that poor white girl. Okay, well, let's test that. Let's look at the numbers and see if this policy is racist against white people, as a lot of people will claim. All right. Now, according to the filings, 1 black and 4 Hispanic applicants with test scores and grades lower than Fisher were admitted in 2008. Well, there you go. Racist. But wait, so were 42 white applicants. These 42 white people also had grades and test scores that were worse than Abigail Fisher. 42 of them. They were white people. Not only that, but 168 black and Hispanic applicants in the pool who had combined AI, PAI scores identical to or higher than Fisher's were also denied admission in that same year. So this really isn't about race. all those black and Latinos were denied that had higher scores than Fisher. No, it's not about race at all. No, what this whole thing comes down to is entitlement. You see, Abigail Fisher, she really wanted to get into the school that her that her father and her sister went to. You see, they were alumni. She wanted to get in based on legacy. Well, why wouldn't they accept her, right? They had good grades. She had good grades. But her grades weren't high enough. Now, the other reasons that they didn't accept her is that she wasn't disadvantaged in any other way. She wasn't exceptional in any way. Abigail Fisher was normal and received no special privilege. Now, for some reason, she felt she was entitled to special privilege. Now, why do I say entitled? Because she turned down a standard UT offer under which she could have gone to the university her sophomore year if she had spent 1 year in any other Texas university and gotten a 3.2 GPA. Now, she's a smart girl. She could have pulled that off and then been able to transfer to the school of her dreams. But no, that wasn't good enough for her. She had the entitlement mentality, right? And maybe that's due in part to the words of her lawyer, a man named Edward Bloom. Now, Edward Bloom really hates all sorts of affirmative action, as well as even the Voting Rights Act. And he wants to challenge the 14th Amendment. Basically, what I think he did is that he used this girl, filled her head with bullshit, in order to try to strike down these laws that have actually helped make universities more diverse, that have actually tried to help the African American community and the Latino community by getting them access to education at top schools. And that's really the truth of the story. See, it wasn't about this until Edward Bloom made it about race. He took a girl who felt entitled to special treatment and ended up dragging her into court for years. For what? For nothing. She ended up going to Louisiana and graduated. She got a job. The only thing that she missed out on is being a special alumni and maybe access to people there that might help her get a better starting job. That's what she missed out on. Look, at the end of the day, I kind of think Abigail Fisher was a victim, but not in the way that she thought that she was. See, she's a victim of an entitlement mentality. Someone who is used by conservatives to try to erase the progress that we've made in trying to raise minorities up after centuries of trying to keep them down. At the end of the day, I do want affirmative action to go away. But before we can do that, we actually have to keep working on raising up African American communities, fixing inner city schools, funding education, bringing African American households' net worth up to everyone else's, ending institutional racism that hurts primarily black communities, and of course fighting poverty. We've got to do all that stuff before we can even think about getting rid of programs like affirmative action. I hope for a day that we can get rid of those programs because we won't need them, because they won't have disadvantages anymore. But as long as we have these structural disadvantages, then we need programs like these. And look, all of these suggestions are a good place to start in making sure that at the end of the day, we have equality and justice for all.